Welcome to the I'm Healing podcast. I'm your host and healer, Iris L. Mendez of ILM Healing Solutions. Here we will discuss all healing solutions for the soul. Let's heal. Episode 5 Therapy Talk. Welcome back, and I hope that you're staying well. I wanted to talk today about mental health. In accessing mental health, what does mental health treatment look like? And what does therapy look like? So, we're going to be reviewing some common questions that I often get. And I wanted to start off by kind of sharing a little bit of my experience with therapy. And I think that as a therapist or as a mental health professional, it's often hard for us as providers to admit that, hey, we might have needed some support once or twice in our life before, and that's totally okay. And I say that to say that therapists are not immune to stresses of the world or our personal lives. So if you are a therapist, if you're a mental health provider and you're listening, I highly encourage you to seek the support that you need when you feel that you need it. Doctors see doctors too. They can't provide certain procedures on themselves. And we want to be mindful that we're also not practicing any harm or practicing our ethical standards of doing no harm to our clients. And if we're not taking care of ourselves thoroughly, then we want to make sure that we are doing no harm to our clients in that sense. Because oftentimes if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't pour from empty cups. And so I highly encourage you to take care of yourself, and if that means getting yourself your own provider, then be sure to do so. And so as far as my experience, I've actually used a program called the Employee Assistance Program before with one of my employers at a local hospital that offered me a set number of visits at no cost to me. And I used them post a really, really bad car accident about 5 or 6 years ago. And I was suffering from some flashbacks and inability to sleep. And at that point, I was even having some fears related to getting back behind the wheel and driving. And so it took me a while to kind of get through that, but therapy definitely helped me work through that with that provider, even if it was short term, to help me get back behind the wheel and to help me process what happened and even come up with some skills to help me with the flashbacks and the sleep disturbance and things like that. So therapy is really what you make of it. And so therapy will look like you and your provider meeting one-on-one, and that can be in an office setting or that can be virtually, especially now with coronavirus and COVID-19 pandemic across the states of the United States. There are many providers who are offering telemental health or virtual visits of therapy or telepsych. Basically, you're meeting with their provider on some sort of platform, whether that's virtually like Skype or FaceTime, or whether that is over the phone where you're just having an actual phone conversation with the provider. And so therapy is really your space to go to process your thoughts, emotions, behaviors, right? Past experiences, and this could be childhood things, trauma, childhood adverse effects. Therapy can be a place where you process communication or effective communication skills, where you process interpersonal skills if you feel that you're lagging in certain social areas or inability to comprehend social norms, or even to reinforce behaviors or reinforce rather boundaries that you might have difficulty reinforcing. Therapy can be to help process the grief or a loss, and that can be the loss of a loved one, the loss of a pet, the loss of a loved one who's still living and well on this earth, but just maybe they're no longer a part of your life, or they're distant and now they live across the country. You don't have as much access to them or no contact at all. So these are all different reasons why people go to therapy. And oftentimes people think that they need to go to therapy if they have a diagnosis or if they quote unquote think that they're crazy. And so I want to refrain from using the word crazy. You are not that word if you need mental health therapy. Let's get that straight. You are okay. You are normal. You just need an extra little bit of support, and that is totally okay. And so, how you access mental health benefits is by really checking with your employer if you're employed. If you have insurance through your employer, you want to check on the back of your insurance card for the customer service number or the mental health number, behavioral health number on the back of the card. Sometimes it shows that way. The 4 members number, that is going to be how you find out what your benefits are, who you have available within the network that you can see, what your responsibility would be to see this provider, whether you have a deductible or a co-insurance or a copay. There's lots of different nuances as far as insurance goes. So I definitely want to encourage you to be informed and become an advocate for yourself, and call the provider, the number on the back of your card, so that you can get providers and you can get information related to what your benefits are that you're covered through. The other thing, if you are employed, even if you don't have health insurance through your employer, you want to always check to see if you have an employee assistance program. As I stated before, I utilized my EAP or employee assistance program at a previous employer. I worked at a local hospital, and I think I got a handful, maybe 4 or 5 sessions at no cost to me, and that kind of helped me to get through the struggles that I was going through related to a car accident. And so definitely take advantage of utilizing your employee assistance program benefits. Check with your human resources, check with your employer, check with your health insurance to see if you have an EAP package plan that offers you a set number of visits at no cost to you. And the other thing about that I would recommend is, if you're unemployed and you don't have any insurance, but you live in a household with other people who are employed and have insurance, their EAP package plan may extend to you as a household member. So even if you're not a member on their policy, or actually a policy holder, you may still have access to their EAP. So their set number of visits may extend to you at no cost. So definitely be mindful of that, and check with your household members to see if their EAP may extend to you, because you might be missing out on some visits there at no cost to you. If you don't have health insurance, I would recommend utilizing a search engine like Google to take advantage to see if you have what's called a sliding scale, or if there are any sliding scale providers in your area. And so sliding scale providers will essentially work with your income. They'll do a financial assessment, and they'll come up with a flat rate of whatever they're going to charge you per session when you meet with them. And one really great tool that I like to recommend people to search for is called Open Path Collective. So it's openpath, P-A-T-H, collective.org. Open Path Collective offers clients a directory of mental health providers in their area who agree to only offer services at a certain rate. So basically, you as the client, you'll sign up through OpenPath. You'll pay the membership fee. It's a once in a lifetime fee that you pay. It's not like you have to repay that annually. I think it's about $50, don't quote me, or $40 to $50. And so once you sign up with them, you're able to schedule appointments with the providers on the directory. And these providers on the directory have essentially agreed to only provide services to low-income, underinsured, or non-insured members or clients And for individual sessions, they can't charge you any less than $30 for a individual session. They cannot charge you any more than $50. So between $30 to $50 is what you would pay for your session with the provider. And these are all licensed therapists. And so it's a really good platform to take advantage of. I also want to share a new platform that I've become aware of due to one of the therapist groups that I'm in. So I wanted to share the resource. There is a therapist who created a directory of local therapists currently, or not local therapists, therapists across the nation currently who are offering therapy related to COVID-19 and coronavirus. So if you're having any anxieties or fears related to that, there are providers who are out there waiting for you to call them because you are their ideal client. This is who they want to talk to. This is what their expertise is in, and they are ready and willing to help you learn some new skills and help you process what's going on. So take a look at the website pandemictherapist.com. Again, that's pandemictherapist.com, and see what providers are in your state offering that service. The other platforms that I want to mention are, again, if you don't have insurance, or if you do have insurance and you're willing to pay out of pocket, I would recommend utilizing platforms like BetterHelp in addition to TalkSpace. BetterHelp and TalkSpace offer applications, phone applications that you download. So it's super easy. You have access to your therapist via a HIPAA compliant app. You're able to chat with your provider, regular chat, kind of like texting, and you're also able to schedule live phone calls and video chats or video calls that are also HIPAA compliant. The really neat thing about BetterHelp and TalkSpace is that you have access to your provider kind of daily, and their requirement is to respond to you daily as well. But for the most part, they often set boundaries with you and let you know what is expected when you'll expect to hear them. So you'll definitely work with each provider differently in a sense. But what I really like about it is, oftentimes in therapy, some clients will come underprepared. They'll kind of just show up and not really have anything to process and not really know what happened over the past week or two to tell the provider, so that the provider can offer not advice but perspective and help you work on your skills, some coping skills, help you process emotion, help you process behavior, things like that. If you're Therapy is what you make of it. So if you're not coming prepared, I often recommend keeping some sort of a journal or a log of what's happened over the past week or two before you meet with your provider. That way you have, topics to reference when you're in the therapy session, and you really get the most out of it. So what's good about BetterHelp and Talkspace and these platforms where you have access to your provider daily versus one time a week or once every other week, you can actually text them or type to them in the moment if things are occurring. So if you're having some sort of a crisis, or if you're having some sort of, and when I say crisis, I mean, a panic attack or something of the sort, not necessarily suicidal ideation. If you're having suicidal ideation, I highly recommend that you call your nearest crisis center, call your nearest ER. Because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, I wouldn't recommend rushing to a hospital right now. You definitely want to call ahead or in advance, or call 911. And so, if you are experiencing those types of thoughts or self-injurious behaviors and things like that, I wouldn't recommend these platforms because they are not for people who have more intensive needs. So I would definitely recommend something more intensive at that point. Now, with BetterHelp, you're able to type in to your provider if there is some sort of a crisis or panic attack, and you're able to process it kind of not necessarily in the moment, because the provider won't necessarily respond right away when it's happening, but you have perspective, whereas you can talk about it the very next day versus waiting a week or two to meet with the provider. And then at that point, you maybe didn't write down what happened, or your executive functioning or parts of your brain that retain memory are not really working as well. So you kind of forget what even brought you to that crisis state or that panic attack to even process it. So that's why I would say that it's helpful to keep a journal, and these platforms like BetterHelp and Talkspace are really good for helping people process kind of in the moment types of needs. And so with that said, as far as finding the right match for a therapist, I think this is a question that I get often when people are struggling with finding a provider. They want to understand, how do they know what's the best fit. I will often recommend, double checking your provider's credentials to make sure that, they're licensed, they're in good standing with their board, in good standing with their state. Check with their credentials and their certifications, because they might have certain expertise levels that you want them to have. And additionally, as far as credentials go, there's psychologists. These are providers who have a PhD likely, or a PsyD. They've gone to school past the graduate school level. And then you have licensed master's level clinicians like myself, who have the undergrad, bachelor's background, bachelor's degree, and a graduate degree, and licenses within the state to provide these services of therapy. There's clinical licensures as well. So there's licensed social workers, which oftentimes people get confused and think that licensed social workers are not able to provide therapy services. They can. You'll often find that licensed clinical social workers are offering that more than licensed social workers. And a LSW is likely being supervised by an LCSW. And so that doesn't mean that they're not able to provide the service, or that also doesn't mean that their expertise level is any less. There's also licensed marriage family therapists and licensed professional counselors. So there's different types of credentials, and all of these providers are able to provide talk therapy, psychotherapy. They're able to meet your needs as far as, if you're suffering from depression, anxiety. Most providers have background in common modalities of therapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, which offers support with your cognition, how your thoughts are, how you process them, how you react to those thoughts, how your emotions are, how you react to those emotions. So that cognition and behavior is key in CBT. And oftentimes it requires homework that the provider will give you, so you can do your homework and then come back and talk to your provider about the homework you did and kind of process things that way. There's dialectical behavioral therapy too, which is a little bit, core focuses on different skills, subset of skills. One of those skills is mindfulness, is one of the core skills of DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. And that's a modality that can be used for just the skills itself, but more intensively, it could be used for intensive outpatient, meaning you're seeing a provider multiple times a week. So you might have like a group therapy plus individual therapy when it comes to DBT. And then if we think about other forms of treatments, as far as intensive, that would be inpatient placement. So actually staying overnight, being observed, because you might be deemed a threat to yourself or others. And then partial hospitalization programs, which typically are half of a day, where you go to get your treatment for half of a full day, kind of 6 to 8 hours, group therapy. You see a therapist, you might see a psychiatrist also, who provides medication management should they make that recommendation. So I think a lot of times people often confuse psychiatrists and psychologists. So psychologist is going to be a therapist, just like a licensed master's level clinician will be that also. They don't typically offer any medication management or prescribe anything. A psychiatrist, you'll have to see separately for medication management. And a lot of people don't realize that if they want both therapy and medication management, you will be seeing two different providers, mental health providers for that. And they're two separate services. So understand that as well. Now, as far as therapy, in a sense, I want to encourage everybody to really take care of their mental health, to really identify what your coping skills are, and really create what's called like a self-care toolkit and or coping skill toolkit. And that's basically something that you go to during your day-to-day that might help you relieve some anxiety, might help you relieve some stress. It might help you distract yourself from, the day-to-day, especially with everything that's going on globally right now. And so I want to recommend that you all really sit down and, take out some paper and write down what are some things that help you take care of you? What are some things that help you cope in times of stress? And during your day to day, put it somewhere where it's visible, put it somewhere where you have access to it. So in those moments, you're starting to feel like you might need some extra support. And, it might be in between sessions with your provider, or you might not be connected with one yet. Definitely take a look at this self-care toolkit and really write down the things that help you. So for me, my self-care toolkit will always include yoga. It'll include, mindfulness, practicing mindfulness, diffusing essential oils, taking really long baths or showers, or practicing some sensory deprivation, sitting in the dark, sitting in silence. Some other things I have on my self-care toolkit include cooking. Cooking can be very peaceful, but it's also helpful to cook a new dish because it gets you into a state of trying something new. Creating a new habit or a new hobby is also a way that can be helpful for distracting the mind. Watching a feel-good show, things that you know all the words to, or it's something that makes you feel good, that you already know what to expect and to anticipate, especially in a world where we don't know, the future's unknown, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow even. So really taking advantage of being present and focusing on the things that you can control, in addition to coming up with some things and some skills that help you to relax yourself and help you to distract the mind and help you to cope, right? So that is going to be my challenge to you all. I hope that you all go on after this, after listening to this podcast, go grab a journal, write down some of the things that help you distract yourself. And I think that it's really important to become self-aware of ourselves. Without that self-awareness, we're not able to really tap into the skills that help us to cope and the skills that help us to take care of ourselves. So I highly recommend that you take some time to spend time with yourself, get to know yourself a little bit more, and really write down and become familiar with the things that help you to stay sane, help you to de-stress, and help you to relax. And so I thank you all for tuning in to episode 5, Therapy Talk. I want to hear from you. So, what's on your self-care toolkit? Feel free to shoot me a message. You can email me at ilmhealingsolutions, that's SOULUTIONS, at gmail.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at ILM_healing. And be sure to share the podcast, like, subscribe, and stay well. Happy healing.